So I was just looking through some old footage I have on my laptop, and I found this clip that I thought you might find quite interesting. It's a debate I did on Sky News back in October around the whole Ashes Bakery debacle. If you're not familiar with that story, then buckle up because I'm going to give you a real quick rundown of what happened. Basically, this bakery in Northern Ireland was asked to make a cake with a slogan supporting same-sex marriage. Cake, 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 cake. And they refused based on their Christian beliefs. Understandably, the LGBT activist who commissioned the cake decided to take it to court, and the Northern Irish courts ruled in favour of the LGBT activist. The owners of the bakery decided that wasn't fair, so they decided they were going to take it to the High Court in London. Now, what you might not know and find a bit surprising is that even though same-sex marriage is legal in the UK, it's actually not legal in Northern Ireland, and it's a fight that's still going on. But what's even more weird is that when it came to London, they actually ruled in favour of the Christian bakery. Obviously, it caused quite a media furore. What does that mean for LGBT rights in this country? Sky News wanted some crazy LGBT activist to come debate it live on television against a lawyer, and they found me, and this is what they got.
Let's get more on that ruling, should we? Supporters say it's a nod to free belief and speech, but opponents say it has wider implications for the LGBT community. Let's speak to Nick Jovcić-Sas, an Orthodox Christian and LGBTQ activist in Bath, and Mark Hill QC, who specialises in ecclesiastical law and religious liberty. And they both join us, as you can see, our lawyer joining us from central London. Hello to you both. Thank you for joining us on the Kay Burley Show this afternoon. Nick, to you first of all, if I may, your reaction to this final ruling.
Well, I'm very shocked and disappointed by it. I think fundamentally that UK law shouldn't protect racism, it shouldn't protect racism, and it shouldn't protect homophobia. And I think I find it particularly alarming as someone who is a devout Christian themselves. I don't understand what this has to do with the protection of my faith. At the end of the day, if you aren't in favour of gay marriage, if you don't want a gay marriage, don't have one. And if you don't like writing nice messages on cakes, then maybe you shouldn't be a baker.
Mark Hill, QC?
I think that slightly misrepresents the decision. What we have received today from the Supreme Court is an anodyne decision which supports the freedom of speech, something which we all value in any liberal democracy. There's nothing homophobic or bigoted about the judgment. On the contrary, Lady Hale went out of her way to express her support for the gay community and to give the backing of the law for all that implies. All that has been said is that in Northern Ireland, where the issue of gay marriage remains political, it's not yet lawful as it is in the remainder of the United Kingdom. No individual should be compelled to sign up to a message in which they don't believe. It's as simple as that. It's an anodyne judgment, and I welcome it.
Nick, contrary to what you're saying, Mark Hill QC is saying this is supporting freedom of speech, this judgment.
Well, I think there's kind of a little bit of double talk going on right here, because I think sometimes fundamentalists will sort of say one thing and mean another. So, for example, on the issue of abortion, people will say they're pro-life, when what they really mean is they're anti-choice. And I think in this instance, what's being said is people are saying their freedom of speech. What we're talking about is the freedom of people to hate and discriminate against certain groups. And I think the implications of this ruling shows to that, people still think that homophobia is an acceptable belief in this country, that minorities, gay people like myself, shouldn't have equal rights to other people, and that should be protected by UK law.
Mark Hill, it's the freedom to hate is the decision.
There is nothing homophobic at all in the decision. I'm sorry to talk over you. Nothing homophobic at all in the decision. On the contrary, the judgment expressly recognises that the bakers were perfectly prepared to provide any service they wished to the customer. This isn't about the customer. This is purely about the message. The great thing about the debate that we're having today is you've brought together two speakers with diametrically diametrically opposed views. If at the end of this interview you asked me to adopt all that the other speaker has said, or vice versa, that would be an outrage. So all that the court is doing is saying that wherever you are, you can express whatever view you wish, but you cannot be compelled to express an opinion which you do not believe in. That is a victory for liberal democracy.
Mick?
So I think another good example of this might be in the 1980s in South Africa, the Dutch Reformed Church was a very big supporter of the apartheid movement. Because of their interpretation of the Old Testament, they believed that the Old Testament said that white people are superior to black people. So I'm interested if Mark thinks the UK law, in a similar instance, would protect people who believe white superiority on the basis of their religious beliefs.
It's unthinkable that United Kingdom law would protect white superiority in the same way that the law wouldn't protect any form of extreme belief such as that. What the law does protect, and what today's judgment has reinforced, is the liberty of anyone to say what they wish and not to be compelled to say what they disagree with. My concern is that the media and lobbyists might choose to misrepresent the carefully nuanced views expressed in a unanimous decision of the Supreme Court. And
Nick, do go on.
Oh, sorry. Well, I think this is sort of... people are using this debate as a bit of a sort of guise to get across other kinds of views. As I said, it's a sort of double talk. People are talking about the freedom of speech or freedom of religion, practice their religion, but really what this is about how acceptable is homophobia in Britain today. And, in Northern Ireland, there's still so much of a way to go, especially with same-sex marriage. And I think what this ruling has showed is that, unfortunately, the courts are still willing to protect people's homophobic speech, unfortunately.
Mark?
I struggle to find anything in the judgment which supports homophobia. Quite the contrary. It's quite clear from the judgment, it's quite clear from the evidence that was given by the bakers, that there is no judgment being made at all on the individuals. This isn't the case of a no Jews, no blacks policy, of a shopkeeper who says, I will serve the straight community, but not the gay community. Let me put that to bed immediately, because that is to misrepresent the judgment in its entirety. As we know, there is political debate in Northern Ireland as to whether same-sex marriage should be introduced or not. That debate will continue. It's been before the legislature on at least 3 occasions, and it remains controversial. If a customer is asking for a cake, so be it. That cake will be provided irrespective of the sexual orientation of the customer. But if the baker or if the provider of any other service is being compelled under threat of civil sanction to say something which is fundamentally opposed to his or her sincerely held Christian views, then that is quite wrong. And the positive thing today is that Lady Hale and the 4 other justices of the Supreme Court has put that question beyond any doubt.
No, I don't agree. I mean, what I think is, and what I find so curious about this ruling is the fact that because they didn't discriminate the individual per se, but instead all same-sex couples, that this is somehow non-homophobic as a ruling. I think that's kind of ridiculous, a sort of bizarre splitting of hairs. The fact that you can oppose equal human rights for all LGBT people in this country, which should be a fundamental right and not a privilege. And that's okay because you're not saying it about the individual specifically. I mean, that seems like a really bizarre splitting of hairs there.
I don't think it's a splitting of hairs at all. And the fact that you and I do differ on this supports the fundamental importance of freedom of expression. This isn't about an opinion in respect of one gay person or the gay community as a whole. This is a case which turns entirely on the expression of a political view. It's a little bit like the problems one has at universities with speakers being no-platformed. What we thrive on in this country, what we have fought for generations in this country, is that people should be free to express their own views. Voltaire famously said, "Disagree with everything you say, but defend to the death the right to say it." Similarly, one shouldn't be compelled to express a view with which one disagrees.
Nick, I knew that you would laugh at that. Go on.
Well, you're kind of really putting words in my mouth here. I mean, I'm not against freedom of speech at all. I'm someone who does work as a political activist. Of course, I believe in freedom of speech. I think it's sort of building a bit of a straw man attack here. But I think also what comes with rights is responsibility. You know, you could work in a shop and you might have the right to say something rude to a customer, but it doesn't mean that you don't have the responsibility that then you could lose your job afterwards. And I think, you know, with this instance, what they've said, there must be sort of repercussions for that, because it's not just any arbitrary political view, but it also has real ramifications for the LGBT people living in our country today. And even though we have seen such a great sort of progression in rights, there is still so much homophobia and inequality rife in this country. I mean, Northern Ireland is an example where, you know, still people cannot have same-sex marriage. I would not have the same rights as Mark in Northern Ireland, and that is deeply unfair and something that I campaign on to change as a Christian myself.
We started with you, Nick, so we must end, in all fairness, with Mark Hill, QC. Your final thought, Mark?
Well, I think both of the speakers, we would have exactly the same rights in Northern Ireland. This isn't about one of us being given preferential treatment against the other. This isn't an attack on the gay community. Every line of Baroness Hale's decision reinforces the importance of living together in diversity and of accommodating different views throughout society. And one of those accommodations is that we shouldn't be compelled on threat of civil sanction from expressing a view which is contrary to our deepest and most sincerely held beliefs. This, I think, is a landmark case, and it's a landmark case for freedom of expression, which is why I welcome it.
OK, good to talk to both of you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. You've probably got your own views on that as well.
So yeah, that's what happened. Not sure if it helped or hindered me when I started laughing at his Voltaire quote, but what's done is done. I actually think in all seriousness that this case really highlighted that there is still a real tolerance for anti-LGBT sentiment as long as it comes under the guise of religion in the UK. And that's... damn it! Anyway, thank you for watching. Watch this space. More content coming next week. Subscribe below. See you around.